Welcome to Booklandia, where we review romance novels.
This and every episode are chock full of oversharing and spoilers. Every episode is rated E for explicit. Hi, welcome to Booklandia.
Hi.
I am your co-host, Ford. I forgot my name for a minute.
Excellent. And I'm Sky.
And while Sky clicks around, you're done. You're settled into your non-clicking position.
I believe so. There's been so much re-situating of things.
Why is it so hard for us to just be in a room and talk to each other digitally, recordingly?
Because we are producing this by ourselves.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Because we do not have a producer.
Yeah.
Or an audio engineer. We are the producer and the audio engineer in the room.
Yeah.
No, Finn, no offense. I do not mean that you don't exist. You do.
There's definitely tech support provided by.
Yes. So the reason it's not that it's hard. It's that tech support and recording time are the same time.
Yes.
And I think that can get really frustrating when creatively we just want to record.
Yeah.
But technically we got to do the stuff.
Yeah, we gotta do the stuff.
We gotta update the things and set up the setups. So for all of you who are personally recording your podcasts, here's we get you.
You are the heroes everyone knows and loves.
Yes, we understand. So yes, we will reorganize the setup so many more times before we get to something new. Yeah. And then we will change that again.
Yeah, and like every adjustment and note that we make is cascades into 18 more things, and then you personally, as the technical-minded person, it learns and all the pitfalls.
Yes.
And then remembers the pitfalls, and you're like, I've been in this pit before.
Yes.
I know what to do.
Some pits have been visited more than once. True story.
Speaking of Indiana Jones, and pits full of snakes, this episode is going to be chock full of local fireworks.
Oh yes. I was like, how does this connect to Indiana Jones?
But it doesn't.
It doesn't.
Just so you know, when we're recording, it is the eve of 4th of July.
Now I understand. And there will perhaps be all the people who are really playing chicken with their fingers.
Oh yeah. There is at least one person in our neighborhood who really loves setting off quarter sticks of dynamite. It was real fun in the pandemic because, like, every night right before, I think, kid bedtime, because it was right around 8, quarter stick of dynamite.
Wow.
And then the kids would scream. It was so fun. So anyway, apologies for any boom booms in the room.
There we go. Should we tell the folks what we're talking about today?
Absolutely.
So the book
probably.
So the book we're talking
Make
about
them guess.
Today. Do you want to say the title since you're having so much trouble?
Oh yeah. Okay. I'll take a stab at it. It is A Lady's Guide to Celestial Mechanics.
Yes, by Olivia Waite.
By Olivia. It's not Waite?
It's Waite. I'm pointing at the screen so you can see it. It's Waite.
Oh, there is no H.
Waite.
Yeah, it's not. Okay. All right. Well, there we go. The more you learn.
The more you learn.
The only way I stopped myself from calling it Celestial Bodies this time was to think about a lady mechanic.
I see. Well, so it is actually a reference.
Okay.
So there is a book out there.
Okay.
A physics book.
I'm so sorry. Did you do research?
I already knew this, but yes, let's pretend I did research. So I mean, there is a book out there called Celestial Mechanics. And it is a book like the one they talk about. A book that expanded on our understanding of gravitational forces and planetary alignment.
Cool.
And it was written right about that time. So I think that A Lady's Guide to Celestial Mechanics is a reference to the original, an allusion to the original text. Yes.
Oh. Okay.
So that's how I remember it, is because Celestial Mechanics is a real thing.
It's because you know the actual thing and you're not thinking about Lady Mechanics.
Right. Though, Lady Mechanics would have added to the world of this book.
Oh, yes.
I would have enjoyed a lady
Yes.
mechanic or two. There's a printmaker.
Yes, like like an inky like smear on
Yeah.
a cheek.
I mean,
Yeah,
there's like
yeah,
blue, Thalon blue that gets spilled on the sleeve. There's a whole
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
Should I read this blurbosaurus?
Sure. I was feeling poetic when I wrote it.
Oh, not
So
salty?
no. No, it was so it might make no sense and tell you nothing.
Okay, great. Well, we'll try to remedy that after the fact, if in fact.
Okay, great. We'll retcon this whole situation.
Yes.
All right, shall I count you in?
Yes.
Are you ready?
Yes.
A 5, 6, 7, 8.
Okay. Lucy runs away from her countryside home on the day of her ex-lover's marriage to land herself in the sitting room of Countess of Moth, asking for patronage in translating a new French work in astronomy. Catherine, the Countess, has always lived in her husband's scientific shadow, forced to throw dinner parties rather than being allowed to participate. With Lucy's proposition, the two women find a new path to forge for their own betterment and for each other. Wow, sorry.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah. It's confusing.
It is confusing, but I think that is accurate of the book.
Yeah.
So we read this book because we read a heterosexual historical, and like one that from an author that everybody knows. And
Names,
oh, sorry.
names.
Well, yeah. So we read the Lisa Kleypas Summer's
yes.
Secret Midsummer Night.
Secrets of the Summer's Night.
Right.
Oh, chink.
And
that's a quote from the show. It's a quote from the Shakespeare show. Never mind. Okay.
Oh, wow. Okay, yeah, I knew the quote, so I didn't react to it negatively, but fair point.
Yes.
So it didn't work for us. We didn't love it, right?
Yeah.
Both of us didn't love it. So we went to this because it was written in 2019. So it's a modern.
Yeah.
It is
whatever fifth wave of feminism we're in.
Exactly. It is lesbian. It's on the cover, so it's not a surprise.
Yeah.
And it is about lady scientists. So it's women in STEM historically.
Mm-hmm.
By all markers, by all things on the cover and on the back cover, we should have loved this.
Yes.
And yet, I have many questions. And I feel that
is my feeling.
Yeah. I feel like part of the reason why I didn't like it is because it tried to do so many things. It tried to be so many things. And in doing so, it had too many similes.
That was your first complaint.
There
and
were so many similes.
Couldn't unread it. I couldn't unread
There was literally a sentence where there was a simile on a simile.
Oh, well, that's just lesbian similes.
Too many. So yes. So I have notes.
And that is why we are gathered here today to talk about your thoughts and mine.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say. So actually, this first conversation plot point actually is yours in its entirety, but it ties into the plot. So the plot is, firstly, for the first 3 chapters, you don't really know their first names.
True.
They're just referred to by their last names, and it feels really impersonal.
Do not ask me to try and pronounce Lucy's last name. I intentionally did not put it in the blurb because I'm not sure, and so my brain just went Lucy blah blah blah.
Day. She's Lucy's.
No, it's that's Catherine Saint Day.
Oh, Catherine Saint Day. Okay, yeah, well, there we go. This is the problem. So Lucy witnesses her lesbian lover Pris get married, and on that same day leaves for London to suggest that she should translate Celestial Mechanics, a work by a French astronomer that is about to break the minds of all the men in London. And then she arrives at Catherine's Saint Day, who's
Countess of Moth.
Countess of Mouth, which I have to say is kind of the coolest part of her name, and we never find out why.
It absolutely is. But this is not a gothic romance.
Right.
Why is her
Agreed.
title Moth?
So she arrives at Catherine's and asks for patronage. And I was trying to think of which tropes this fits into. And I was like, is it like a May December? And it isn't really. It's like a May July because there's a 10-year age gap between them.
Yeah.
But then so then we find out that Lucy's brilliant and that she can translate this spectacular work and also making it sound entertaining to people who have never taken an astronomy lesson before. Right. So think Emily from Emily's Wonder Lab for children. You don't know who that is. You're making the who is that face. I will introduce you to Emily's Wonder Lab after this episode. It is wonderful.
Excellent. I went to Emily in Paris.
She is she is right, at Emily. Space Gal on all social medias. Okay.
But she's taking a 401 text and making it a 101 text. She's astronomy 401.
Yes, and then
making it an astronomy
101. Thank you.
Yes.
Now I understand. Yes. So she does all of this. She's wonderful. Somehow this 17-year-old, which is I think Lucy's age.
I thought she was older. I can't.
I mean,
remember.
she might be 18, but
really,
there's not a lot of conversation about her getting married. There's like a little bit, but
that's
not
true.
yet.
But like, she also had a father who was sort of
indulgent of her proclivities.
And head in the clouds.
Yes, but so
he was astronomer. That's the joke, everybody.
Right. Well, or she is 25 and Catherine is 35, which is possible.
Yeah.
At any rate, she's brilliant. She's young. She does all the stuff. And then Catherine's like, she looks tasty.
Gross. So gross. Did it really sound that predatory to you?
Because it did. At the beginning, it really did.
Okay.
And like, yeah, it did. And the whole premise of it is that Lucy is a more experienced lover than Catherine is.
Yeah.
And that, I guess, is where their power dynamic is supposed to rebalance.
She has the money, she has the experience.
Right. One has the money, the other has the experience. But I don't know, there was something about it. And I think it's really that we're the omniscient observer of the whole thing. The reason why it didn't work for me, most of all, isn't their age difference. And it isn't the power dynamic between the two of them. The reason it didn't work for me is because it felt really distant. It felt really separated. Like, I did not have any stakes invested in either one of these women, in their well-being, in their love life. Like, I was like, cool, this story happened to them. And all of the external stakes were sort of like all at the same, like it all felt like it was the same intensity.
Yeah.
So like their love affair, their discovery of wanting each other for more than just lovers, their scientific endeavors, their artistic endeavors, all of it carried the same weight, and none of it to me had a very clear high stake.
Yeah.
And so I was like, great, here's like, it felt very distant.
Yeah.
And so maybe that's why I'm picking at all the imperfections of it, because there weren't any perfections for me.
Ooh, Rouch. I felt like this book was just a vehicle for the author to make a commentary about women, invisible labor. The invisible labor of women is really, I think, sort of the main theme that she was really sort of chomping on. And before I dive into it, can you close the door all the way? Because it's cracked open, and I think the dog barking and the fireworks are about to get worse. Thank you. And I will talk at you.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So please prepare for my TED Talk. Yeah, get it. Excellent. Um, so the part I felt like she was the most passionate about, the author, is um women as scientists and being labeled as scientists and being self-identifying as scientists and making space for each other or making a community for each other. And and also the role of women in art and how women are excluded from both spaces. And I'm talking quote unquote art because there's this whole conversation about the domestic arts.
Right. And so this is what I mean by I think it tried to do too much because there's a conversation about women in STEM,
Yeah.
particularly in England at that time.
Mm-hmm.
There's a conversation about colonialism
Yeah.
and the indigenous people whose entire cultures were eradicated.
Yeah.
There's a conversation about uh, queer coding
Mm-hmm.
and queer spaces in a society that doesn't have queer spaces
Yeah.
openly, safely available. There's a conversation about domestic art as art.
Mm-hmm.
There's a conversation about art critics and their place in the art world, like who decides what is art.
Yeah.
And and then there's a love story. And then there's some domestic drama and some historical abuse, right? Like,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
there's the actual astronomy, like the scientific labor of it,
Yeah.
and the like conversations about astronomy.
Mm-hmm.
This is not a chunky book.
It's not. And I thought it was almost overly scientific, like perhaps a little too scientific for everything that was going on.
Right. There's just so much. And
Yeah.
there are some books and some authors who can like lightly graze over everything and you're like sure, and then there are authors who choose to really narrow their focus, and this book did neither of those things, and then it also tried to be literary
Sure.
in terms of its language, which is why I brought up the similes because there were so many, and I feel like I needed fewer things.
Yeah.
And
Right.
domestic art is art,
Yeah.
in case you're not clear on that, please get clear on that immediately.
Yeah.
Like women can do math.
Right.
Also, immediately get on that page.
It's that meme. So that kind of all boils down to this meme that was going around about how our grandmothers were making quilts and they were doing the quadratic equation in their head to make
Right.
these quilts. So no, you scrolled too far. I need my gigantic blurb.
Sorry.
I haven't even talked about my gigantic blurb of information.
I apologize.
So in the realm of domestic art, so art and museums are one of the things that I really attach to just personally. And so when this conversation was brought up in the book, I'm like, oh, something I care about.
Mm-hmm.
And so like I put the book down to think about things that it was bringing up. And so at this point in time, the book is pointing out that women aren't even painters yet, which was sort of the first foray for women into visual art. Like they said, oh, I'm not even I paint, I reproduce these paintings, but I'm not actually considered an artist.
This is historically specific to England at this time because Artemisia has already been a painter 200 years previous to this.
Right. This book is set in 1816.
Yeah, so Renaissance happened 200 years previous to that. Yes. There were women painting during the Renaissance.
Right, and so they're being intentionally excluded.
Yes.
From the British art world. And so I would like to take this time to talk about female and women-based art. One of my favorite painters is a female, and she was painting she started painting in the late 30s. Her name is Remedios Vero. She's a Spanish painter. And I want to talk about her. So first, stepping into the book is saying women aren't painters. So I want to talk about a woman painter. She was in the community with Breton and Perret, and like was lovers with all of them. They all had to escape the Nazi occupation. And they all moved to Mexico, or she moved to Mexico. And as a surrealist painter, she paints the woman's societal experience of, running a household, of being a parent, of being a caretaker, and paints it in not necessarily a great viewpoint, but also surreal. And it's like the most beautiful paintings, because she explores the psychology of being, what it is to be a woman, or what it is to be female. And like it, that's obviously what men are excluding women from, is the female point of view, especially at this time. And then I also want to point out, so in the domestic arts corner of this, the art that is considered American art. So, like, what is American art? How would you define American art?
Wood carvings,
Okay.
craftsman houses,
Oh,
quilting.
so that is what the Smithsonian considers American art.
Right.
The Smithsonian has so many quilts in its I've done research, everybody. So many quilts in its storage, they can no longer accept quilts. How many quilt exhibitions or galleries have you been to?
I haven't been to any, but I actually teach it in my class.
That's awesome.
There's a phenomenal artist who is a, a woman of color, and her primary medium is textile.
Yeah. And it, like, that being the only acceptable sort of art for women for hundreds of years.
Well, in England, it's needlepoint for right, and in France
right.
for many, and in this book there's
an embroidery.
An embroidery. There's a lot of needlepoint and embroidery, and there's a conversation about whether or not it's art or if it's just domestic need, and the difference between the two. Yeah, that conversation is really meaningful.
Yeah,
it's great.
Yeah.
How does it fit into this astronomy book?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't care. I'm just gonna keep talking.
Oh, please, please do go on.
And so, like, I guess the last point about quilting as the art of America is, the most famous quilt I can think of is the Underground Railroad quilts. The quilts that were made that told the path, that were the maps for the Underground Railroad. And so not only is quilting feminist, but it's also, is egalitarian the right word? Like,
well, it's anti-racist.
Anti-racist. It's also something that Black people used to emancipate themselves.
Yes.
So there's that, and then the third artist I want to talk about is I got to see her exhibition in Toronto. She's a First Nations textile worker artist. Her name is Nadia Meyer. Am I saying it right? Yeah. So she comes from the I wrote it down. Kitigan Zibi Ashinibig First Nation. And so the work that I saw, the exhibition I saw, was called Scattered Pieces. And there was a piece in there that absolutely moved me. And if I remember, I'll upload the video to our Instagram after this posts. And it was called Orison, which is, I think, their indigenous tribal language for the word net. And it's this red net suspended from the ceiling and laid out in a circle, and the edges of it are weighed down with these, fist-sized river stones. So it's stones tied all the way around the circle, and then it slowly, like, raises and lowers, and that's all it does. Raises, and I just stood there, and I was just mesmerized by this piece. And some of the research that I read about is the review I saw interpreted as capture and a release. And I think that really spoke to me in some sort of deeper way of, like, how do I even explain? Like, I was arrested by the concept of not only kinetic art, but indigenous kinetic art that also speaks to a way of life and an experience within society. And so, like, she fucking nailed it. But one of her most famous pieces is called in the Indian Act. So she takes the Canadian Indian Act, which is 56 pages long, and she placed white beads over the text and red beads over the negative space to show in how few words the entire First Nation and Indigenous culture of Canada was illegalized. It's 56 pages long and like so few white beads. And that's all it took for the government to take control of their lives and their land and their culture. And it's like just so powerful and still within the realm of domestic art, of using beads and netting and like things that aren't paint or sculpture or whatever traditional European visual medium to say like this is art and this is experience. So that's my TED talk on art.
Thank you.
And why was it in this book? This is what the book made me care about, was
looking up or remembering these art experiences.
And centering female artists in and honoring those artists who have been trailblazers so that other female and women artists could exist as well.
I don't think that's what the book was about.
No. But that's what I chose to care about.
Copy that.
Because I had to care about something.
No, I understand. I don't know if there's a way back into the conversation about the book now.
We can just do a hard pivot.
I think we'll have to.
Yeah.
It sort of. You know what? It's going to be a soft pivot.
Oh.
It has to do with the scientist mentioned in the book, right? Because this is loosely based on real events, very loosely.
Sure.
So,
wait, did you do research as well?
Yes.
Oh my God, who are we?
Yeah, so Lucy is translating Celestial Mechanics, which is written by a French scientist. And the big reveal at the very end of the book is that this entire English Society of Men, who's been telling Lucy that she cannot be smart enough to translate, she cannot possibly in her womanly way understand.
She's too female.
She's too female to understand astronomy in the first place, so she definitely cannot translate it. It is revealed at the very end of the book that the scientist is a woman of color.
The French woman.
The French woman is a woman, and they being all the men of the Scientific Society of England have to contend with that. Mm-hmm. Did you know before it is revealed?
I knew at the first hint. So when the friend was like, I've been corresponding with,
and there'll be a surprise.
Yes. I was like, oh, it's a chick.
Yes.
It's a lady.
It's a lady. That's exactly what I knew as well. It was a little self-evident.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was a little heavy-handed, but it made going into that scene that should have been a climax scene less climactic.
Yes.
Because I was like, you got a friend in her.
That's right. Yeah. That's absolutely right.
We knew she wasn't walking into a lion's den.
Yes.
Yeah. The gaff issue I have is that consistently throughout this book, which is set in 1816, I'll say it again because I looked it up twice, is that they use the term scientist.
Yes.
And from what I read on Wikipedia, because I only do basic research, the word scientist wasn't invented until 1836.
So what should have been the word instead?
Oh, I didn't know that far. Come on now. And there is controversy about the origin. Like I've read two different, like, scientist was invented as a term for women doing this work, and then the other thing is this dude invented it and used it as a term. So there's sort of conflicting story. And look, I haven't read anything beyond the Wikipedia page.
Understood.
So I could be wrong. You know what? Let me know. Am I wrong? come tell me. I've just also seen some TikToks and
Excellent.
read a
And
Wikipedia page.
perfect. Well, those are definitely
Informing the
sources.
masses.
I don't know if it's primary sources, but it is sources.
It's definitely sources.
Yes.
But like that's 20 years. Like the author couldn't do basic.
Right. Yeah, maybe the other word was just really terrible, like gnome.
Oh,
Astrology astrology gnome.
One. It's two. It was very long. Like one who stares at the sky. I don't
Right.
know.
Yeah, perhaps.
But like once again, maybe there was just a really good French term.
Alchemist.
Oh, I could be down for alchemist.
Probably. But then that's
Sure.
confusing for
Sure.
an American audience. Perhaps.
Is it?
Yeah, alchemy is magic, I feel like.
Alchemy is trying to turn everything into gold.
Yes. Yes, but I think perhaps I don't know. I'm just speculating.
Okay, great.
Yeah, no idea.
What do you think alchemy means? Come at
Well,
us.
right. Yes. Please and thank you.
Please at us. The one thing I will give this book is that I think it's probably really good for the baby gays. Like, if you're like a baby lesbian and you're like, I could be into girls. Am I into girls? Like, this book might be just the soft river you float down to figure it out. Like those parts, Catherine being a woman who's never been with a woman before, like that character experience could be very relatable to someone who is exploring that. And so I want to give this book that due.
Sure. She goes from being really timid to being a top, if I were to describe lesbians in those terms.
A power bottom?
A power top.
A power top.
Yes, because sure. Lucy is a power bottom.
That's true.
Because
that's true.
She's the one that has
controlling everything,
but she's usually the one doing the things.
Yeah.
That was really not a sexy way to describe it, but it is sexy in the book. Okay, so let's talk about that. Wait, should we save that for later?
Yeah, we're gonna save that for later. We'll talk about the sexy bits
whether or not it's mechanical or sexy, or is mechanical sexy?
Is it mechanical or bodies?
Ooh, yes. Okay. Do you want to get into your question about stays? Because I also did research on this. Do you want to actually ask the question?
I do. So, because there's a lot of ladies undressing ladies, I was very confused because I thought I understood at least the basic layers of period female attire. And they made it sound like stays and bodices were different, when I thought stay was another word for like the boning in a corset, and or like a men's suspenders, silk suspenders, and a bodice was another word for the corset. So a splay?
Yeah. So actually, we already talked about this a little bit in Summer's Midsummer's Secret Eve. But
when you talk about costumes, I just fangirl a little.
Okay, so here's the really complicated part. At some point after in the 19th century, linguistically, for reasons unknown, stays and corsets became interchangeable, which is why it is confusing. But going previous to that, and not the verbiage of it, but the actual description of the garment, stays were usually flat-fronted, laced in the back. Remember the conversation from the other day about
squishy the boobies.
So actually, you could be any shape and you could relax inside the stays, because the stays themselves were they were their own solid armor that surrounded your body and created the whatever shape was fashionable. Moreover, the bodice of your garment would come to either side of the stays, and the front of the stay is revealed. or there would be an additional stomacher that could be
Yeah.
laced on. So, and then it actually also gets into women dressmakers, because women become dressmakers right before this when they start making mantuas. Mantuas are like, it's sort of like what we now call a robe essentially, but it
Mhm.
you put it on from the back,
Mhm.
and then it buttons to the front of the stays. So the front of your stays is revealed, and then like there's a decorative connective tissue to your gown. So
Uh-huh.
the bodice of your gown didn't
Uh-huh.
exist as its own thing until much later. So the stays are, think of
The
them as like,
corset.
it's not a corset. It's
Mhm.
the armor that creates the whatever shape is fashionable. Corsets are closer to what we now think of as undergarments. So
Mhm.
corsets are actually supportive to your shape rather
Mm.
than exist regardless of your shape.
Okay. So, okay, I think I get the difference between the stays and the corsets. Like the corset is the thing you like see like women are holding onto the bedpost and they're being like laced into it really tightly.
Yes, but also the original point of the corset was to like, it's to support the
Mhm.
breasts, it's to promote good posture, it's to like upkeep everything,
Yeah.
and sort of, and eventually devolved into a girdle and whatnot.
Yeah.
And yes, the like the Hollywood version of it is Scarlett O'Hara getting cinched into her corset. So a corset holds up your shape,
Yeah.
whereas stays are their own shape and
Sure.
you just hang out inside of it.
Okay. Which came first?
Stays.
Okay. Um, and then so the thing where you're talking about the stomacher, that's something I that immediately took me back to like when you watch the old like OG Shakespeare's.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, yeah. So that's where it started. It started
Yeah.
with Queen Elizabeth,
Yeah.
and then from there on. So
And it's usually like a white panel that's like rock hard.
right. So it then, like, so if you go forward into England, that, so the stays just got decorative, and so the
Mhm.
stomacher was eliminated. And then there was this really cool thing, and by cool I don't know if I mean cool. So there was a center, it's called a basque, Basque,
Sure.
and it
Okay.
is either a wooden or eventually a metal 2-inch plate that goes down the center so
Uh-huh.
that the entire front bit of the thing can be flat.
Okay.
Well, if you sit down to dinner, you can't.
Yeah.
Not with that thing there. So one of the things that women would do, and it was perfectly acceptable to do, is to take their basque out and put it on the table
Uh-huh.
so that they could actually sit down to eat dinner.
Where's the romance novel where a woman stops a bullet with that thing?
Right?
I'd read
Right?
that shit.
So yeah, we don't.
Or it's like sharpened like a knife
I mean,
or
there's
tied
like
to
some of
it.
the things where like there's like daggers in their bosom, and that's how. So corsets become more commonly available when whale boning is able to be machined
Sure.
into more specific shapes,
Yeah.
because before that it's just straight lines. So
Yeah.
once we're able to shape a bra cup,
Mhm.
or to shape a curve of a
Right.
hip, that is when we switch to corsets. And then once
Mm.
the Industrial Revolution happens and we go into metal boning,
Yeah.
and metal boning
Okay.
is able to be curved, that's when corsets get really tight and cinching and
Yeah.
all of that.
I think about Enola Holmes
Yeah.
and like that and the bustle was also metal.
Yes.
So you
Yeah,
can
because
also
she's in second bustle by the time we were in Enola Holmes. It's called the
yeah,
second bustle.
and she hides her money in her bustle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's very common. So yeah, so the big
That
difference between stays and corsets is stays are an armored plate you're hidden behind, and corset is a thing that is an actual undergarment supporting your body type.
great. So what is the piece under the corset or the stay? The sort of skin part.
The chemise,
Chemise. Okay. All right.
which looks like
So
like a nightgown with just
yeah.
a drawstring at the top and
Yeah, and
nothing
it's
else.
usually like a tank top or long sleeves,
Yes, or
depending.
like cap sleeves,
Cap
and it
sleeve.
always slips off the shoulder, and that's always a thing.
All right, so you got your chemise layer, and then you've got your stays or corsets, and then you have your bodice.
Well, you have your gown.
Your gown, which has a bodice piece either attached or separate, depending on the time period.
Correct.
Got it.
And then there's a skirt, or your bodice and skirt are all one piece.
Yeah.
And then before you get to that, you also have either pantaloons or pantalettes.
Yeah. And
depending on the time period.
tights.
And then tights or stockings, again, depending on the time period. But there you go. There you go. That's the answer.
Amazing. Aren't you? I'm not even wearing a bra right now. This is like, I'm so glad that this is the world I live in.
Well, to be fair, if you were all the way in the world of stays, you probably wouldn't, like, it would just exist on its own.
It would be at my chin because I'd be slouching in it.
Exactly. It would just exist, and you would just hide inside of it. There'd be snacks in there.
Yes. So many Cheez-Its. So many 14th century Cheez-Its.
Oh, I suspect that that's probably not as good as it sounds.
No,
right.
They didn't have salt.
Some of them had salt.
The rich ones had salt.
Yes, or people in Southeast Asia and China. Yes. All right. Should we, on this very strange note, should we take a tiny break? Tiny break. We're going to take an intermission. When we come back, we will discuss our favorite moments from the book and if this book made us want to get naked. All right. Sorry. I am 100% still back.
Oh, hi. It's okay. I can do the introduction. We're back. Welcome back to Booklandia. Sky is over there. Ford is over here. That's a me. And we are talking about A Lady's Guide to Celestial Mechanics because it's Rosie the Riveter in my head.
You got it.
So we talked about why we didn't like this book, and I talked about the one thing extensively that I did like about this book.
Yes.
But do you want to go into the most compelling moment or your favorite moment, if you even had one?
So the most compelling part of this book, to me, is the conversation, and I don't mean like a particular conversation in the book, but I mean the theme of women supporting and elevating other women.
Yes.
There are many instances of this in the book, and one of them is the printmaker. Who encourages Catherine, Mrs. Griffin, who encourages Catherine not only to pursue the parts of her art that are going to be profitable, but also the parts of her art that are just art, that just evoke a feeling. And there are other instances in the book of women supporting women, either in spaces where women aren't being heard or in places where queer women need to feel safe. So that community felt very meaningful to me.
Yeah.
And was a part of the book that I was really glad existed.
Yeah, that's actually my favorite part as well. When Catherine finds out that her mother was in a lesbian relationship with the woman that she called her aunt, and that her aunt, who is still like deeply involved in her life, made a shrine for her mother, like, that was touching. That was really touching, and it showed, I think it really helped Catherine develop or realize that she wasn't alone in who she was as a person. And I think that is the first step for people being welcomed into the community, is like, you're not alone. You're not the first person to forge this path, and there's people with knowledge and empathy, for sure. So hot take on this book.
I found it really hard to understand the stakes.
Yeah.
So I found it really hard to care.
Did we suffer from high expectations?
Maybe. I mean, I have been told that this book is like the pinnacle of historical lesbian romance. And I have notes.
Sure.
So hot take, it maybe for you. Maybe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Maybe not. If you like a story, just a story. You're
Mhm.
not emotionally invested, you just hang out with your characters,
Yeah.
come for this story.
Yeah.
If you like to really live in the heads of your characters, this didn't do it.
Yeah. Something was disconnected for me as well, and I think you said it correctly, and it was trying to do too many things. Um, but it did get me to thinking because immediately after finishing this book, I started reading A Lady's Formula to Love by Elizabeth Everett, and having those two books back to back, I don't know, are you gonna try and read that one?
Yeah, I started it today.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So I get we'll talk about more about that, but it makes it easier for me to see that there's this trend among romance writers about historical women in STEM.
Mm-hmm.
Because we have this one, we have Latest Formula, the Duke series by Evie Dunsmore.
Mm-hmm.
It's at least about like blue stockings or women
Yeah.
in
And I
STEM
mean
or
and Hell's Bells,
Hell's Bells. Yes.
Sarah McLean's Hell's
Hmm.
Bells, which Knockout is out, coming out. We're here. We're there.
Where it's knocking us out
It's
any
knocking.
moment now.
Yes.
But so I started to think about like, is this the only way, or is this perhaps the most well trodden way for historical romance writers to write feminism?
Because they're already, I can see that. Like you can't be a society
Miss.
miss and
Right.
feminist. You have to, like, the way you break the bonds.
But you can, and I think that's maybe what Sarah McLean's story is about. Like the first one, especially, she is like in the middle of society. She's doing what she wants. She is all about her cute dresses and going to parties and kissing boys. And she's also still feminist as hell. And I think that's what feminism is about: is love what you love unabashedly and with equality.
Yes. I mean, this is why we keep coming back to Sarah McLean as
Yeah.
the standard by which we
Yeah.
measure all others,
Yeah.
because I think she wrote some excellent
Yeah.
uh women, historical women who measure up to what is my standard
Yeah.
for an
Modern
independent,
standard.
for a modern standard of an independent woman,
Yeah.
um who is still compassionate and still has meaningful relationship with other women, has meaningful relationship with men, does not rely on validation from those men to be fully themselves.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean that is the standard by which I measure things.
Yeah.
And so when it doesn't come up to that standard,
Womp womp.
I make, yeah, I have notes.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about sexiness,
Okay.
or not.
Look, ladies kissing ladies is sexy. That's just a hand down thing. It's cute. It's cute. I'm so sorry. My like queer shyness has come to the forefront. Um,
I was gonna say it can be cute. That's not its primary goal.
it's so cute. Awkward. And so it was, I would describe it as scintillating. Did I immediately put my hand down my pants? No, I did not. I just was not 100% DTF on this book.
Yeah, the idea of there are quite a few sex scenes.
Hmm.
The idea of those sex scenes, like the choreography of them, was really clear,
Yeah.
and the concept of what they were doing, if you will, the concept, the choreography of what they were doing,
Well, the power bottom.
yeah, was very clear. And I was like, this is really fun. I want it to be really fun, but they went from like barely catching glances of each other to like fisting very quickly. And I needed more time in between, more
Yeah.
emotional time in between,
Hmm.
because this is a kind of book that was setting it up as an emotional connection.
Hmm.
If this was a book where it was just about getting
Uh-huh.
up in there, please do as quickly as possible.
Right.
But
Make it an
yeah,
erotica.
but
Yeah.
that wasn't its case, right? It was meant to be like they care for each other deeply, and now they're exploring each other's bodies, and that would have been lovely.
Yeah,
But it wasn't. It went from,
so it's kind of half this and half
it was
that.
half this and half that, and in the meantime, I wasn't invested enough to like really drop into these sex scenes. Instead, it was like, oh, that's nice, I guess. Good for them. Good for them. Right? Like, it was never like, oh, good for all of us. It was like, oh, good for them.
Yeah, that's probably nice for them.
It's probably nice for them. Yeah, there's also a couple of like, I was like, you're doing what? What are you doing? I need more explanation of what you're doing.
Yeah. Yes. Absolutely.
There's a little bit of like, I don't quite like, is there a little bit of Vaseline on this lens? I feel like there's a little bit.
I think there was a little bit.
There was like, there's just a lot of poetic
coming togetherness.
Yes. And I was like, just tell me, because we've already gotten so deep in there.
Yeah.
You can use all your proper words.
Yeah. So I'm excited for us to talk about a lady's formula to love. Prepositional phrases tripped me up there, because I think that it takes a step in the Sarah McLean direction that this book doesn't. But there are things that I think this book does better. And so.
Okay. Well, now I know.
Just one small, tiny, teensy little note.
Okay, teensy little note. Excellent. Well,
cute note.
Now y'all know where we're headed.
Yeah.
Into another historical. This so far
about sciencey
ladies. This has been the season of sciencey lady historicals.
I'm here for the season of sciencey historical ladies.
I might have to switch to sciencey non-historical ladies. I did, in fact.
You did.
I read Love Theoretically, and I would love to talk about that at some point as well. But it was more ladies in STEM, not ladies on ladies. Ladies on.
Yeah, and that's what the ladies' formula to love is. It is Trey hetero.
Yes, I've already gotten to that part.
There's a lovely LGBT moment, and I'm just gonna be vague about it.
Excellent. I'm excited to find it, because I'm not there yet.
It's so cute.
All right. Oh my gosh. My legs have fallen asleep, so I feel like this is a great moment to end the episode.
Both our audience on pins and needles and your legs.
Yes. Thank you so very much for that.
You're very welcome.
Thank you for joining us for an episode of Booklandia.
For more Booklandia, follow us on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram at l.skyford, Twitter at skyfordl, and hit up our blog, lskyford.com.
We love you to the moon and back, so don't forget to rate and subscribe.
Our eternal thanks for the audio editing and support provided by Finnegan Murphy, who you can find on Twitter at Finnegan1, that's FIONNEGAN, numeral 1, and sometimes Sky herself.